Welcome back to What You Didn't Know, Rock and Roll History. So, first of all, thank you to all of our listeners, all 5 of you.
All 5 of you. You're the best 5 people on this planet.
That's right. Hi, Dad.
Yeah.
We're gonna shift some direction here, at least on this episode. We're going to focus more on decades,
or portions of decades,
and what music was like in those decades. Because what we're trying to do is see how things went from bluesy, gospel-y music to the hardcore screaming rampage that we have today.
Right. The multifaceted, sub-leveled fucking legion of genres that is rock and roll.
Yes. Rock and roll spans so many subgenres.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to where did the branches start splitting?
Right.
Is where we're trying to go here.
Right. So we've done a few episodes that are focused on individuals. We talked specifically about T-Bone Walker. We talked about Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and we did 2 episodes about Chuck Berry. So from here, we're going to start trying to focus on specific decades, like Steve said. We may throw in a specific artist somewhere if there's any particular artist that has more for us to be able to fit into a digestible episode, or has a specific, cultural influence, or, something like that.
So like today's episode, we're going to be focusing on the early 1950s.
2 artists individually.
And there was a third artist we were going to try to throw in there, and you'll find out who that is at the end of the episode. But there was just so much there that we were like, let's not make a super long episode and just give that person their own. That being said, if you guys have any specific artists that you would like us to cover, you can contact us at highlife.podcast@gmail.com and just put in the comment section what you didn't know, artist referral, or something to get my attention.
Yeah.
I get a lot of junk mail.
Yeah.
But today, like I said, we're going to cover the early 1950s, and we're going to start with Little Richard. He was another influential artist of the time. Full name is Richard Penniman, known professionally as Little Richard. He was described as the architect of rock and roll. He was known for his works in soul, funk, and hip-hop. So very well-rounded
Indeed.
Artist. Very, very talented.
Absolutely.
That to me, like, that's one thing I judge on artists like that I like how many tricks they got in the bag.
For sure. A one-trick pony is really cool for about 10 minutes.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what makes the difference between, the bands from the 70s that everybody still listens to and the bands from 2015 that nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah.
Or everybody's forgotten about, is that they just couldn't
adapt.
Yeah. Yeah, they couldn't adapt to the changing scene, especially nowadays. The music scene changes so much faster than it used to.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially now, like, you can put out a song.
And it's for, if you don't put out another song within 2 or 3 months, you're off the radar.
But, like, what I meant was, like, you can release just songs now.
As opposed to full albums.
Yeah,
for sure. And honestly, it's probably more viable these days.
Yeah. I think some of these artists that are still putting out, I'm not saying a full album is a bad thing.
No.
But if you're holding out for a full album before you release anything,
just release.
You're already behind.
Yeah, just start releasing.
So that's my opinion.
For sure. In my opinion as an artist, it's better to just get your art out as opposed to trying to wait and hold out for that perfect album to be done, because honestly, by the time you get that perfect album done, it's already outdated.
Yeah.
So if you've got something that you really want done, just get it out. Get it out.
Yep. So, yeah. In October 1947, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, if you remember, we talked about her on her own episode and the influence she had on Chuck Berry. She also was an influence on Little Richard.
Indeed.
So she overheard 14-year-old Richard singing one of her songs before a performance at the Macon City Auditorium. She invited him to open her show. After the show, she paid him, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
To like, hey kid, thanks.
Yeah.
Here's $20. We don't actually know how much it was, but
right.
And then that inspired him to become a professional performer. That gave him, like we talked about before, the performance itch.
Mm-hmm.
That
desire for the stage.
Yes. It's a real thing, people. Like, you do it once, and you either
love it or you hate it.
Yeah. Or both.
You love to hate it.
Love to hate it.
Hate to
but
love it.
You either want to do it again or you never want to do it again.
Right.
So that gave him that itch to become a professional performer. He stated that his piano style was greatly influenced by Ike Turner's piano intro on Rocket 88. And so we're going to play a sample real quick of what we're talking about. Okay, so you hear that just that rockin' piano, and that is what Little Richard said inspired him.
And that's, and it makes a lot of sense too, especially as we get into another sample here in a little bit that is probably Little Richard's biggest song. You're going to hear a very similar like structure and even rhythm, the jagged but like almost straight eighth notes with a little bit of swing to it. It's a pretty specific rhythm that you're going to hear that's very, very similar to this. So in 1955, Richard then launched into a risque dirty blues he titled Tutti Frutti. Recorded in 3 takes in September 1955, Tutti Frutti was released as a single that November and became an instant hit, reaching number 2 on Billboard magazine's Rhythm and Blues bestsellers chart. It reached number 21 on the Billboard Top 100 in America and number 29 on the British singles chart, eventually selling 1 million copies.
So, I'm not an artist. I'm a podcaster. But that's why I wanted an art. This is one reason I wanted an artist on the show. So would doing a song in 3 takes, like, I feel like that's significant somehow for them to even mention it.
It is definitely significant. And I like the way that you just kind of said that like, basically you wanted to do this podcast with an artist to have that perspective.
Yes.
And it's definitely significant. And like we were saying in the intro here, this is a very well-rounded musician. And to be able to get a top 100, number 21, number 29 in Britain, 21 in America on the top 100, and number 2 on the rhythm and blues charts, to get a track that's solid enough to do that in 3 takes is absolutely a mark of an incredible musician. Because in the 1950s, you go to the studio now and you can record the same 10-second clip of a song 35 times with no problems.
Right.
You know, you can,
because we're even right now we're recording on digitally.
Yeah, I mean, there's no. See, in the 50s, you were recording on tape, essentially, and then that tape would be transcribed to vinyl, and it was a whole thing. But you can't just record over it. You know, you can't just go back and re-record it. You have to remove that whole section of tape to even try to do it, and even. So you pretty much had to nail it because you can't go back and fix it willy-nilly. So for this to be that good of a recording, to have hit that high on that many charts that quickly in 3 takes is absolutely astonishing. It's a good musician.
That sounds so much more than I ever thought that it would be. I've seen in the movies and the TV shows old recording studios, but I never thought about how it went from the mic to the record.
For sure, it's a hell of a process. It was then, because and there was no digital in it at all. Everything was analog. You have to physically start and stop the process. You can't just hit spacebar.
And I don't know if this is because I'm in my 30s, but analog seems so far-fetched compared to digital. Like, digital just seems simple compared to what analog was.
I think it's made. I don't know if
because if I said to you, here's a digital file with a song recorded on it. Okay, like there's audio in this digital file.
Right.
But if I said here's this plastic material, but if you run it over a magnet, it'll make
It's
music.
gone.
You're going to look at me like I'm fucking crazy.
Right, yeah, for sure. For sure. And is it because you're in your 30s?
Or does just analog not make sense?
Well, see, I think I don't necessarily know that being digital makes it any simpler. I think it makes it more accessible.
Yeah.
Because analog equipment is, at least in my opinion, analog equipment's pretty easy to understand once you understand it. But everybody understands
it's just
digital.
I don't understand how it works.
Right. It's signal path. That's a whole nother podcast. Okay, we can get into that sometime if you want to, but we're gonna have to start a whole new project.
All right. So,
what were we talking about? Tutti Frutti.
Tutti Frutti. I have Tutti Frutti right here.
We got a sample.
So, yeah, just give the song a listen and think about, or if you want to back it up a little bit, the last sample that we played.
Right, the Rocket 88 intro.
Womp bam loom bam 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 to the boot, oh rude, 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 oh womp bam loom bam bam bam.
So that that dun 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 on the piano, that's that style that he's talking about. Imitating from Ike Turner.
Right. And if you ever watch a video of this man playing the piano,
there is so much energy.
Not sitting still.
There is so much energy.
He is just, man, those fingers are moving.
He's back and
bouncing
forth
in his seat. He's leaning into that mic. He's leaning back from the mic. This man, I mean, he looks like he's on drugs. He is just feeling that music, man.
For sure, man. Music, man. Yeah, man. And I mean, he was in it, absolutely in it. We've got a YouTube channel.
It is not a video of us.
It's just our podcast on YouTube. But we can make playlists there. So I'm not guaranteeing it to the listeners.
We might edit this out.
Oh no, this is staying in there.
Oh, okay.
Y'all can deal with it. I'm not guaranteeing it to any of you listeners, but I might, if we talk about something visual on the show, I might try to throw it on our YouTube.
Okay.
If I think about it. No, I'll try and make sure that there's something there for you to see. Because his performances, it really is something to behold. There's so much energy. There's so much movement. I mean, watching him play makes me sweat. Richard was quoted as saying, "A lot of songs I sang to the crowd first to watch their reaction. That's how I knew they'd hit." Like,
I think that is so cool to just be like, I got this new song I'm working on, and I don't know how well it's going to do. Should I even record this? You know what? Fuck it. We'll do it live.
for sure. And that's I'm not going to say that that's super common, especially in modern rock, but I would say in early music in general, especially rock and roll, because there wasn't a whole lot of money in it. That was probably relatively common that you would be, because you're performing to perform, and at this point in time, to have a record is because somebody heard your performance and wanted to capture that. So typically, at this point in time, it's probably more common to play your songs live before you record them. However, these days, that's not so much a thing. The only one that I know for sure is a jam band called Twiddle. They had an album called Plump that came out a few years back it was the first album of theirs that they had not played anything on it live before they recorded it.
Wow.
So, and it was a great album. Just throwing that out there. But Twiddle is fantastic. If you like jam bands, check them out.
Real quick, currently we have no official sponsors, but I would like to plug.
Independent.
I would like to plug some things. High Life Podcast. It's out there. I need to get back to actually, talking to people, but I would greatly appreciate if you guys would check out High Life Podcast. I talked with some amazing TikTok creators and social media influencers, and it was my first project. I think there's some great things you could learn from your favorite TikTok creators.
I'd have to agree with that. I think there's some great things that you can learn from your favorite artists in general, whether they be content creators on TikTok or painters. I mean, there's always, even if you don't paint.
My thing was I wanted to find out what made people start doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That was my thing, was why did you choose that
outlet?
Right. All right. Back to the show. So that was Little Richard.
Little Richard.
If you'd like to know more, let us know.
Yeah.
We can do a deeper dive. But for now, we're going to move on to Ray Charles. And you might be thinking like, he isn't that Jamie Foxx guy? The guy that Jamie Foxx played in a movie? Yes, he was a real person.
He was.
And he was an excellent musician as well. When Charles was an infant, his family moved to Greenville, Florida. He began his musical career technically at age 5 on a piano in a neighborhood cafe. And at age 6, he began to go blind, possibly from glaucoma. He had completely lost his sight by age 7. That's fast.
That's extremely fast.
He attended a school in Florida for the deaf and blind in St. Augustine, where he concentrated on musical studies, but decided to leave at age 15 to play piano professionally after his mother passed away from cancer. His father had passed away when he was around 10.
Not an easy beginning.
Charles recorded the boogie woogie classic Mess Around in 1952. Here is a quick sample of that.
You can talk about the pit, barbecue. The band was jumping, the people too. I mess around.
So you can see like a similarity also between Ray and Little Richard. His is a little toned down compared to Little Richard.
A little bit. A little bit. It's a little slower.
It's still a prominent piano.
Yes.
Which
yes.
I know we said, rock and roll is a featured guitar. But really, rock and roll could be just a featured instrument.
Pretty much. It's like, it's kind of a featured vibe.
Yes.
More so than anything. And like, this was using the piano as a primary focus as opposed to the guitar. And like, they kind of like what you're saying. There's one primary focal point as opposed to being like an entire orchestra, or the rhythm section of a jazz band.
Right.
It's one specific point, whether that be the guitar or the piano or the vocalist or whatever. It's not, I'm not going to say that it's a constant solo, because it's not, but it's a constant emphasis on something else. And there's something else that I noticed about this particular song, that the accented beats on the drums are on the upbeat instead of the downbeat. So like typically, I'll count it real quick just for y'all listening. You'd have your 1, 2, 3, 4, and your drums would typically fall on 1, 2, 3, 4. With this song, it's 1 and. It's between 1, 2, 3, and 4, so it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so it's on the upbeats. The emphasis on the drums is on the upbeats instead of the downbeats, and I think that has a lot to influence what boogie woogie kind of feels like, because it's almost more of a shuffle than like a driving 4 on the floor.
Okay. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
So by 1954, with his successful combination of blues and gospel influences, Charles signed on with Atlantic Records.
Awesome.
We've talked about Atlantic Records before, I'm sure.
We might have. I know we've talked about Chess Records. We've talked about Decca.
Yeah.
We've probably talked about Atlantic. I don't know for sure.
This is just another
big name
that's still around today.
Yeah.
He was propelled by his distinctive raspy voice in I've Got a Woman and Hallelujah, I Love You So. Became hit records. Here's a sample of I've Got a Woman.
Because you need to know this song if you don't already.
Well, I got a woman way over town that's good to me. Oh yeah, say I got a woman way over town, good to me. Oh yeah, she give me money when I'm in need. Yeah, she's a kind of friend indeed.
So if you haven't heard that, you should. It's been in countless movies. Hip hop.
Yeah, I recognized that last part of that audio sample. I was looking at the lyrics, It says, "She gives me money when I'm in need." And I was like, why does that sound so familiar? So I looked it up, and that is the key part to Kanye West's Gold Digger.
The hook.
So, you're like, why do I care about where rock and roll came from or who these older artists are? It's because they're still featured in today's music.
You see, I mean, you're wondering, there's some kind of a parallel with the definition of insanity in that.
I mean, even Eminem, if you listen to, especially a lot of his early stuff, you listen to the beats and you're like, man, this sounds so familiar.
Because it is.
It's because it is. He creates beats out of songs,
which he had permission to do, unlike
Yes.
Vanilla Ice.
To this day, I still can't tell if they're going to sing,
There
Under
is
Pressure
one note difference.
or-
I'll give him that. There is one note difference, but it's not even a pitch note. It's a rhythmic note.
Yeah,
that's
no.
different.
You start playing that, you're like, are they going to say Ice Ice Baby or Under Pressure?
But
So,
no,
yeah.
Kanye had permission.
But yes. So if that last part of that
Eminem had
sample
permission.
sounds familiar to you, it's because it was featured in Kanye West's Gold Digger.
Yeah, it's referenced in newer material, and to me, that makes that particular song have a little bit more value.
So, with that being said, we're finally going to reveal who the artist for the next episode is. And
Wait,
speaking of artists that cover or use other people's music to cover,
hold on.
okay?
I know we just said at the beginning of this episode that we're going to start covering decades and portions of decades in episodes. This particular coming episode needed its own for this artist.
Correct.
There will be a few of those.
Correct.
Continue.
Speaking of artists that cover or use samples from other artists, we're going to be talking about Elvis Presley.
Elvis Aaron Presley.
And if if you don't know a lot about Elvis already, you're probably thinking, Elvis didn't do covers. You're going to learn. You're going to learn. Because there's more than just hip swinging to Elvis.
That was definitely
so that
the best part,
is
though.
what you didn't know about early 1950s rock and roll.
That's right.
So thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe.
Everything.
Everything.
All the shameless
Shameless plugs.
plugs. Yeah.
So yes, we are looking for sponsors. If anybody is interested, get a hold of us.
For sure. We would like to release more than once a month, but
Yeah,
we have
Time
lives.
constraints is all this allows right now.
At the moment, yeah.
And
and budget.
recording schedules
And-
aren't.
It's difficult to line up. So if you want to sponsor the show,
If you want to
we
support us
might
in any
be
way,
able to
let
start
us
producing
know.
a little faster. Yeah.
Shoot us an email.
Hit us up.
highlife.podcast@gmail.com.
And follow Steve's socials. I'll have something set up if
We
you
also-
don't like using Gmail. I'll
also
get something
have
set up.
A YouTube now.
We do have a YouTube now. It's
have
not us.
YouTube.
It's not our faces. It's us.
It's
not our faces. It's our podcast. But it's available for listening on YouTube
Yes. So
at
that's
WYDK Podcast, I believe.
so I think that's all we got for today. And
Next time we tear Presley a new one.
yeah.
Not really, but it'll be fun.
We're gonna learn you.
Yeah,
we're gonna learn
we're
ya.
gonna learn you
You're gonna get
down
teached.
home, backwoods Tennessee style.
You're gonna get teached.
Yeah.
This has been a High Life Media production in accordance with Dragon Inn Studios. Thank you for listening.